Welcome guys, so today we'll look at making some northern lights and so today for this we'll be using three softwares which would be Unreal Engine, Blender and Gimp. If you guys just want to not use those, or if you guys don't have them, I'll leave the file itself, so the plain FBX and the texture in the description below, so make sure you download it from there. And let's get started. So just a quick before we get started is so as you guys can see down here, so I have made a material parameter where if I turn up the emissive value up and down, the northern lights get stronger or less bright. And then there's an opacity. I can of course move them around anywhere I like, so it's just a blueprint where I have added multiple of these. And then as you guys can see, they kind of move around a bit as well, which is controlled by the wind. Of course if you turn it up too high, it just goes too crazy, and if you keep it quite low, it still keeps moving. Then we have the opacity, which kind of really determines how much of the thing actually shows up. This I would recommend keeping it maximum at 1, and the emissive can go slightly higher though, so that's how bright they really are. Then, in case anyone wonders how I made the moon is simply a sphere with a 360 texture of the moon itself. As you guys can see, I believe it's a real image of the moon, I'm not sure, but I found it for free, so let's use it in here. So let's get started. So first off, we'll go to Blender. So inside Blender, as always, as I do in all my videos, we'll just going to turn up screencast so you guys can see anything I press. We want to press A and delete everything, and then head over to our scenes, change them to metric and change the value to 0.01, which makes it the same scale as Unreal Engine and Unity. Then we'll head over to the clip and distance. I just pressed N to bring up this sidebar. I'll change it to 1 kilometer so nothing is clipped out. Now we can press Shift A and we can add a plane, and we can press Tab. We can press 7 and 5 for the orthographic view on the number pad. I'll just select any two, doesn't matter which ones, of the vertices, and press delete vertices. So we have just 2 left, and then we can do we can grab, press Y and I believe -1, or we can just move it down here. So we just move it in the middle and then Control Shift Alt C, origin to 3D cursor. Then we'll press Tab on this, press A, press W and subdivide, and we'll subdivide this. I think 10 is the maximum you can do, so that's fine. And then we'll select each. We'll move this up, just randomly move them around, really, just whatever works, quite high or quite low, doesn't really matter right now too much. So this will basically form the shape of your lights, the northern lights. And then we're going to perhaps do Control 3, which gives us a subdivision surface. Then I'll scale them on the X a bit, and then we press Tab. We go to Modifiers, and we apply the subdivision surface modifier that we just used. You can even do more if you want. You can do Control 5, or you can turn them up and down here. I'll just stick to 3 for this, and then click Apply. We press Tab, select A. We press A to select all of them. We press E and Z if we just extrude them on the Z axis. There we go. And now we kind of have the base for our northern lights basically. And now what we need to do is just going to leave this open for now, and I'll head over to Gimp. Now inside Gimp we need 2 textures. So the first texture is the one that we will unwrap the plane to, and the second one basically forms the color. So I'll just go to make a new one, and I'll leave the bottom one to 400, and I'll leave the width, I'll change the width to 1024, because we want a texture that is longer this way, and shorter, like in the height. So once you have a texture, now normally this would be black and white, the default that you start off with, and if we were to just maybe paint this with white. So what we need to do now is we basically need 4 layers. So we're going to make a new layer. Probably do foreground, or let me just delete that one. So let me delete these 2 layers again. So we'll make a new layer and we'll choose background color, and then we'll make a new one again, we'll choose background color, and then so we'll stop at when we have 4 layers. So for the first layer, what we'll do is we'll go to blend tool, and we'll choose a gradient from here, and we'll use the FG to BG, and we'll just bring this in about here. We'll go to the second layer, we'll bring it down about here. We'll go to the third layer, we'll bring it in about here. We'll go to the last layer and we'll bring that in about here, and we'll change all our layers from normal to multiply. So this one is multiply, this one is multiply, this one is multiply, and finally this one is multiply. So what this gives us, it gives us a nice dark edge which we need for our opacity inside Unreal Engine. And then we'll head over to, actually what we'll do is we'll go right click and we'll merge all layers, so merge visible layers, and that's fine. So now there one, we'll go to filters, blur. Now blur is really useful because you don't want these sharp edges around the corners, so we'll go blur this one, and up to maybe anything that works, maybe 50, 100, let's just go with 100 and press OK. And now you have a nice smooth blur at the edges. Now we'll just make a new layer down here, and we'll go to filters, noise, not this one, sorry, so filters, render, clouds, and solid noise. So we'll take the X up to max, and we'll take the Y down to lower, to the lowest, and as you guys can see, this is the kind of texture we get, which looks kind of like a curtain, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm just going to make it tileable, as that adds a bit more variation between the things. But you guys can stick to this if you like, but tileable is my preferred method. Then I will just press OK, and now we have this nice looking texture. Now we'll change this to multiply as well. And now what we have is we have these this nice looking texture which blends in with our other image as well. And I'm just going to go to filters here, so I'm just going to blur this as well. So blur second one, and I'm going to turn this down. Actually, what if I do maybe 40 by 40 or 25? And now we have a nice blur down here as well. So now once we have this texture, I'm going to go to File, Export As. I've obviously been working with different textures, so I'm just going to save in the same folder, but I'll call this tutorial texture, and that's it. And then export. This image doesn't need to be a PNG because we don't have a transparent background, so to save us some size, some space, we'll just change this to JPEG, and then export, and export. Now back inside Blender, we'll come back here, we'll press tab on this, select all of it, and we'll unwrap. Actually, let me just make a new one down here, so just drag that to the side, and go to UE Image Editor. And then yeah, that's fine. So once you've unwrapped it, we'll go to open, we'll go to where we just saved our texture, and the texture I've just made, this is my older texture that I made earlier, and this is the new one. So we'll just bring this texture in. Down here we'll go to texture, and I'm just going to move this up and scale it on the y-axis until it covers all of it. And now if you press tab, you guys can see that this texture nicely comes down here as well. But one more thing I do before that actually is I'm just going to add a little more black up here. I'm just going to drag the pen down here, change the opacity to keep the opacity quite low, do that, and then I'm just going to add a bit more black down here, because I don't think there is enough at the moment. We need a little more dark areas around. It doesn't have to be perfect, because just have to work. And then once you're happy with it, just going to make the opacity a little darker near the edges. So it gives us a nice blend of the dark colors at the edges. And then once you're happy with it, I'm just going to go to filters, blur again, and times 100, and then press OK, and there we go. It looks slightly better now. Then again, file, and just export to the same thing. Just export it over the same thing. Go back to Blender, and I'm just going to press tab again, delete this one, and bring in the texture once again, the same texture. Of course, we need to make sure that the texture itself has that. So make sure you turn this on before you export, and then the eye icon, and then file, export to texture. And once again, I need to bring this in. So open. And that's it. And now, as you guys can see, it looks slightly better as it has more dark edges, and it just looks nicer. So now, once you've done this, we'll go to File, Export FBX, and I'm just going to save this as tutorial. I'm just going to call it the same thing as I did earlier, Lights Plane FBX. Now, once we've done this, we'll head over to Gimp again, and now we need to make a new texture. So we'll just make a new one down here. And all I'll do is I'll just choose two colors. So the first one, I'll choose a purplish color. And the second one, I'll choose a green color. And we'll go to this again, and we need to choose the right one. So we need a blend between these two colors, and linear works. So now if I was to do that, you can see it goes from purple to green. And we can try blur on this. I'm not sure if it'll do much, but let's just see. Yeah, that's nice. The blur gives us a nice touch to it as well. Now I'll export this also as a JPEG, and I'll call this color. So TUT, which tells me it's the new one that I've just made. And we'll call this color, and we'll just export this as a JPEG file. And now we'll head over to Unreal Engine. So now inside Unreal Engine, I'm just going to go to my content browser, and I'm just going to make a new folder here. I'll call this tutorial, just so I know, so everything's organized. I'll go to import, and I'll just import the three files that I've just saved down here. So I'll control click each of them, and then just open and import. So now for our the plane that we've just made, which is down here, of course you can't see it because it only has a one side, so you guys might have to rotate around to see it now. But quickly, I'm just going to go back to my assets, Northern Lights. So Northern Lights, and I'll just drag the older material down here. And as you guys can see, what this is doing is now this goes crazy because this is kind of small, and the wind is too strong for this size. But what I'm just going to actually do is so inside our tutorial, I'll just make a texture out of this. So just right click on this and create material. Now inside here, I'm just going to drag this tutorial, the other texture as well that we made inside Gimp. Now I am going to change this to translucent, and change it to two-sided foliage, and change it to two-sided, the material itself. We'll connect this to the, so we'll add two multiply nodes down here. We'll connect this into A and this into A, and we'll connect this to the opacity, and this actually to the emissive color, not the base color, in fact. Now I'm going to add two scalar parameters by pressing S. First one I'll call emissive, which controls how strong our emissive color will be, and the second I'll call opacity, which controls how strong our opacity is going to be. And just okay, so once we've done this, and the last node I'll add is actually I'll add a simple grass wind node. So just type simple, it comes up, and we'll connect this to world position offset, and we'll add a scalar parameter here, and we'll connect those to those three, and I'll just call this wind. Now we should be ready to go. Once we've done these things, I'll just save this material. And outside here, I'm going to make a material instance from this. And I'm going to drag this material instance that we just made onto our onto our plane right here. Now inside the material instance, what I'll do is I'm going to check all of them first. I'm going to put the wind about 1, the opacity at 1, and the emissive color at 1. So as you guys can now see, we have a nice looking emissive color down here, which kind of looks quite nice, and it's moving around as well, which kind of gives it that shape. So this is it. Now we can actually just go ahead and drag this out into our scene. And if I was to make this bigger, as you guys can see, we might have to turn up the wind intensity a little bit more to get it to move around. So here we go. So you guys have yourself some Northern Lights looking texture down here. Now so the textures that we made inside Gimp, now these textures will really determine, because the plane itself is not doing much. What's really affecting the actual thing is this texture down here. So any variation to this texture or to the color texture would make a lot of difference. So for example, if I was to maybe do this, take the purple a lot lower, like let's say about here, or let me just change the gradient to let's try this F3 to transparent. So if I was to make it like this, and then if I was to export this over the same file, let's say, and then if I was to go inside my content browser, now all I need to do is just right click, re-import, and as you guys can see, now our Northern Lights are a lot more purple and only a little bit green at the bottom. Now I'll show you guys how I inside Unreal Engine, how I went about getting these to be together, and as you guys would have seen in the intro, they actually get brighter. So I made a simple blueprint. I'm going to close this. So I made a simple blueprint and I added a multiple of these inside here. So multiple of these lights inside here, as you guys can see. So I added multiple of these inside here. I just literally copied them, pasted them, and I rotated them to, facing different angles. And so that kind of gives it like a nice look if you were to look at it from the side. And then I went to the construction script. I created a dynamic material instance for the Northern Lights, the original material that I had. And then in the event graph, what I did is, so I started off with if I can get to the beginning, as you guys can see, I copied and pasted a lot in here. So I started off with a value of 0 and 0 in the original material instance, and I just kept so after every 2-second delay, I just kept turning it up by 0.05, so 0.05, and then down here is also the emissive and the opacity, as you guys would have seen there, which gave a nice look where it starts to get brighter and brighter over time. I'm sure there's a better way of achieving this, but this is the best way because of my limited knowledge of the blueprints that I could come up with. And then finally, it gets pretty bright, as you guys would have seen in the tutorial. So you guys can move this around, and it definitely gets brighter and stuff. And then I basically just I just clicked Alt and just drag this around, or rotate this to add some variation. And if you to look at it from the side, it looks like you have a lot of them coming into play. You can also actually increase the size down here, which makes them look a lot different. So the overall blueprint size. So this is basically how I went about adding this, making this look how it is, and it's actually pretty simple, I think. And I'll just leave the files in the description for you guys to download if you guys want to have a play around with them. And I hope this is somewhat useful for you guys. Originally I was inspired after playing the game Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which is why I started learning Unreal Engine and Blender, to be honest. So I saw the Northern Lights in there and they looked really cool, so I wanted to make something of myself. So this is it, guys. I hope you guys found this useful and you guys enjoyed this. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.